Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning.
Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
Oh, this week we're going to end out our International Horror Festival with 2015's Baskin.
Let's dive on in. All right, everybody, I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Poulter.
And if you like what you see /here, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people find good media. We do 101s, punishment reviews, that one scene, and then we do these festivals, which we're getting ready to end this one out of our International Horror Festival.
Yeah, been really fun.
It has been. I think it was like a really good opportunity to maybe talk about a lot of movies that we otherwise wouldn't have any reason to kind of get into. And there's something in particular about horror where, and I mentioned this before when we were talking about a director like Bong Joon-ho, where you go, there's this whole subset of movies that these directors grew up with that are the same movies that we grew up with. But then there's its own twist and its own flavor, a lot of times that has to do with their own local culture.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of that happening in this movie, in Baskin. I think that there's a lot of stuff that feels like moments that you could go, oh, that's from Nightmare on Elm Street, right? But then there's other things where I'm like, the frogs, like, I don't know what the fuck that is. Like,
It's from Magnolia.
Oh, yeah. But, like, you know.
There is some biblical stuff with the frogs for sure.
Going
on here.
But I just wonder, like, how much has to do with local legends or things that is a contextual piece that maybe we miss.
And that's the beauty of international films, to me, is that you do get to live in another culture that you're not used to. And I think that's why it's so important for people to continue to watch international films.
Yeah.
And maybe they get watched more these days because everything's streaming, but they also could get just lost in the shuffle a lot too.
Well, you think about like the weird symbolism in something like Under the Shadow, right? Where it's like, yeah, this is a haunted house movie.
It's in Iran,
but there's all these elements to it that I'm like, I don't know what the significance of that is. All I know is that it's really scary.
I also think it's important just to create that empathy, right?
Totally.
Like that we talk about, like
live
in someone else's shoes that is in completely different situation than you are right now.
Yep.
And so I always jump at a chance to watch something international like this festival. I'm sure we'll do it again. We've done Pedro Almodovar. We've done a variety of foreign directors and movies and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I just believe it's important. But this is a wild movie. There's a lot of stuff going on here. It was more stylistic than I was imagining it was going to. It goes places you're like, oh shit. Okay.
there's a little bit of Deliverance in here.
Yeah, for
mixed
sure.
With some Hellraiser.
Well, and I was expecting like a lot of gore because you were saying like Revenge was pretty gory. There's a few moments in Revenge where I'm like, fuck, nope. And there's stuff here, but it's more like just overall like, whoa, what are they? Whoa.
Yeah, you kind of keep thinking about stuff after it's over.
And honestly, a lot of the time, so, this is basically a bunch of unsuspecting cops who basically accidentally come upon this mass, and it's essentially the doorway to hell.
Yeah.
There's no actual doorway, though.
Yeah.
And that was fucking with me the whole time because I was like, wait, are they already in hell? Because this doorway could have been like at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. And that's where it gives me this, like, there's this.
But there's no like obvious archway of like, this is hell.
And that's where I think
it's maybe the stairwell going down, but like.
But you never really know. And I think the fact that the movie doubles back on itself so many times gives me this, like, this felt to me like I was trying to think of it earlier today, but I was like, if you could have Hellraiser directed by David Fincher as written by David Lynch, right? Where it's just like, it's
Pretty
super
good.
stylized. It is very, the lighting is so beautiful and weird, and the gels on everything. But then
Yeah.
there's like, we start in hell. It's like the movie starts in hell, but we just don't know it yet.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I was like, so is there an action, like, are we waiting? Like, are they in it? Like, because there's things that happen that make you feel like they're in it, you know?
Because we start at this restaurant, right? And
Yeah.
we're like, but even that, with this lights flickering and there's this misty fog all around them, and you're like,
Sure, yeah, it's
where the
like-
hell are we?
Yeah,
right?
it's all red inside for sure. They easily could already be in there for sure. But you know, we skipped over this opening scene where we're scanning this room. It's a bunch of random shit, you know, and this is like, what is that? Is that like a picture of a pink elephant? Like, and
Yeah.
just like weird. I'm like, where are we? And we scan over to this kid, and you know, he hears his mom
Having sex.
having sex, moaning very loudly.
Yeah.
Gets awakened by that. Who doesn't love that?
Yeah, sure.
And then goes down, checks the TV, static, and turns around, and his room has changed. You know, I mean, that could be the doorway right there. Like,
Yeah.
the idea of a portable doorway to hell is really cool.
Yeah.
So
or that it's almost based around behavior too, because
yeah.
there's so much talk about sex and about this like toxic masculinity.
Sure.
These cops that we meet, like nobody's really that likable. Maybe the rookie, who we find out later is the little boy.
Yes.
In this beginning
Spoiler.
scene. But again, it all wraps around itself.
which is that part of it I wasn't expecting, and they didn't even really need it, but it just makes it better all around.
Yeah, every time it comes back to the conversation and they're in the restaurant, it's like the first time that we go back to the restaurant after all this horrible stuff has started to happen, I was like, okay, wait, so was it a dream or what's happening? And then consecutively, every time that they go back to the restaurant, that became the scariest part of the movie to me, because I'm like, oh my God, I've had this nightmare before. And part of the reason why I said David Lynch is that as we keep coming back to the restaurant, I was being reminded by the Winky scene in Mulholland Drive, where
Sure.
they're sitting and talking about this nightmare, not realizing they're in the middle of it.
Yeah, that's funny.
In the moment. And when you have another character tell you, can you see it? It's behind me. You're like, like I kind of can't ever get out of my head.
And that guy has some fatherly instincts for this younger kid, because he, you know, like you said, and we don't find out about him being the little boy until like 3/4 of the way through the movie.
Yeah.
And that was trippy all on its own. That Winkies is really funny. I also caught some like Session 9 vibes in this.
Yeah, totally. With
Remember
the
that movie?
dilapidated house.
And just like them just going around this creepy place
Yeah.
and don't know what to expect. And I don't know, it had an old hospital vibe feel to it.
Completely. And, you know, one of the really interesting things, Can we just said his name before we started.
Can
Evrenol. I know that he did pull some permits, but they shot this outside of Istanbul.
Yeah, I was going to say he's from Turkey, right?
And they shot it over the course of like a month. And a lot of places they didn't have permits. And the reason why is because lots of people out in the country of where they shot this stuff at are deeply religious, right? Deeply Muslim. And so like the idea of like, oh, it's a sex murder cult movie. Like people would like, he's like, we could have gotten in a lot of trouble. I mean, Turkey doesn't have the same kind of morality police that other Middle Eastern countries do, but they could still have gotten in a lot of trouble. So they were doing this guerrilla style. So they're like, and you think about that with some of the sets they designed to do this guerrilla style. And they're just like, we were freezing cold, covered in fake blood, out in the middle of a swamp.
Wow.
You know, they had to shoot the underwater scene multiple times because they couldn't get good takes of it. And like, again, with it being so stylized, that's one of the reasons why like this movie is not for everybody. I'll just say that right out of the gates. It's pretty intense and pretty wild.
Yeah.
But just knowing this is a first-time filmmaker, the only other thing he's ever done is a short version of this.
Wow.
And it's like, it's so fucking cool. Sorry, it is like the stylization of it, and just like there's stuff in it that's unlike anything you've ever seen.
It was a fun surprise, especially there's not a lot of actors I recognize here, so you're not like distracted by something like that. There's calls to other movies, like you were saying, like Nightmare on Elm Street.
Hellraiser, definitely.
One of the main characters, Yavuz. He has basically his funny like a clown moment, like his Goodfellas moment.
Thank you. Yes, it's totally that. It is a funny like a clown. Like he's yelling at this guy for calling him gay, and it's like, dude, you just told a story
about a trans man.
Yeah, that you had sex with, and now you're like, and then the other cop who's like the father figure cop's like, give me your gun, go ahead, fight him, and you're like, I don't like any of these people. Like, what the hell is happening here?
Yeah, absolutely. There's also this consistent cutaway B-roll of meat cooking.
Yeah.
And you're like, something's cooking in the kitchen.
That they've been given to, and you realize that is Baba. That's watching this is the third time I've seen it. The hooded figure that brings the metal pail full of meat is obviously Baba, the father that we meet later. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, at first I was like, is this human meat, and they're going to serve it to them?
Yeah, that's
but
what I was thinking.
they never eat it. And
yeah, that's true.
On rewatch, I was like, I think it's symbolic, because there's 5 hunks of meat, and they get put on the grill, and by the time the cops leave, they're burned crisp. And I was like, oh, is that the 5 cops?
Oh,
so I don't know, but it's
each
like
have a slab of meat.
Yeah,
I could see that. Okay,
I don't know. It's like, but again, like,
this
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
If
right?
this is your kind of movie, which I really love, this was a fun tone, super stylistic, kind of gangster a little bit, but I don't know. I think that's an interesting way to tell the story.
It totally is. There's a lot of symbolism here. Again, with the frogs, we have our one guy, the driver, who, when we first meet him, has this migraine, goes into the bathroom.
Yeah, starts screaming, freaking out.
Yeah. Now, on rewatch, Baba's standing behind him.
Oh, wow.
And you don't notice it. There's all these little Easter eggs like that.
And I guess that's the point I was trying to get to, is like, this is a movie that I would love to go back and see the little things now that I know the ending. So, great recommendation. I would really like the movie. Let's
talk a little. I'm so glad that you do. I was wondering. I watched it again last night, and I kind of yelled to Abby in the other room. I was like, I don't know if this is too much for him or if he'll like it. But there's just a point where, like, the father Baba character is literally like pulling intestines out of one guy towards the camera like it's confetti. Yep. And I was like, that might be a little much.
Once they get into hell, you're just like, even the first floor where they kind of get taken a little bit, you're just like, wait, there's just like rooms of people
like
having
sex. And then they find one of the other cops.
That's right.
Because they've been called there by another
backup.
unit.
That's right.
And that's before they crash their van. And I love, again, another Texas Chainsaw nod is when they crash the van the first time and get out and see, like, again, the Magnolia level of frogs everywhere. Something has been carved into the side of their van, and they don't know what it is, but they have this conversation about whether or not the van is marked. And I was like, oh yeah, the hitchhiker does that in the original Texas Chainsaw.
Oh, interesting.
Right? He marks the side of the van, and they have a conversation about it. Then we meet some very strange looking people that are camping out, getting ready to eat some frogs. Mm-hmm. And then there's a second crash, and that's where the van actually goes down into the water because they hit somebody. They hit somebody covered in blood, right?
Some naked guy.
Yeah, some naked guy. And at that point, they're on their own now. Like, they don't even have a car anymore. But they're like, oh, we're right by where the distress call came from. Once they get in there, and like you said, on that first floor, they meet one of the cops, which, not the greatest sign that things are going to be okay, because the cop is just banging his head against a wall, like bloody from it, and is pretty much like nonverbal, right? And
yeah, I'd say that's a bad sign.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad sign. And they go to take him out, and then that same officer, the one that had been the driver, gets dragged away by the blood orgy, and the cop who's left over starts giggling. And I was like, that's really scary. Like, it's so nihilistic once they get inside the house. It's like, there's no nothing good can come at this point, right?
No, I mean they're literally in the depths of hell.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're these rooms of people with bags over their heads and blood, kind of having sex, I think.
Yeah, or eating each other, or a little bit of both.
Or both.
And then we meet.
And it's just like, is that what they've turned these people into because they're in hell? Is
Yeah,
that what they're going to be looking forward to?
And then we meet this character, this incredibly tall. It's the most bizarre character that's half masked and has like this headband with straw on it, but is twirling it around like it's hair. Like they're this like,
Very strange.
But it's this man, this tall, gangly, weird looking man. He looks like a riffraff from Rocky Horror Picture Show, kind of. But that's a really unsettling.
He's one of the
character.
shepherds, right?
Yes, he's one of the shepherds, and that's when we meet Father. Now let's talk about, and I have his name here. Let's talk about Mehmet Karaoglu, that stars as the father. He, before this movie, was just a farmer. He never acted a day in his life. He has a skin condition that was a birth defect that makes him very small and gives him this look unlike anybody you've ever seen before in your life. And he just came in and did a cold audition for the part. And after getting the part, worked hand in hand with the director, coming up with backstory ideas for his character, showing, apparently he was this huge horror fanatic, showing the director other movies to get influences. The two of them sat down and watched Apocalypse Now together. Obviously, there's a whole Colonel Kurtz thing going on here.
Sure. I could see that. Wow.
But designed
A lot of
all the
movies that
tattoo
were-
stuff.
yeah.
Like, it just like he was like, I found the greatest guy ever to play this cult leader.
Yeah. Well, and, he's a prisoner too.
Yeah.
To a degree,
Yeah.
we come to find out that at some point, and so like everyone seems to be a prisoner, like the levels of hell that we're going to, and honestly, it's like a haunted house. Like
Totally.
you keep walking to these next rooms, and you're like, what is
It's
next?
getting worse, and it's getting worse. But I mean, that the actor that plays Baba,
Yeah, he's amazing.
it's just unlike, and it's not. I mean, yes, his physical appearance is one where you're like, that's one for the books. But then his acting is incredible. He's weirdly kind, even as he's cutting out other characters' eyes. He's doing this nonstop monologue about like, this is all part of the plan, and like, I need all of you to really come along with me through this, because this night was supposed to happen exactly how it's happening. And you're like, that is so much scarier than if he was some maniacal, laughing, evil genius, right?
100%. Yeah, no, I mean, he's probably the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
Even though the way it's shot and everything, and all the actors are awesome, but he obviously sticks out as being a strong presence inside of this, because you're basically questioning the whole time, is he the devil? Is that the devil?
Yeah.
Because we're in hell, you assume we're going to meet the devil at some point, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But then when he gets
Baskin 2.
Well, and when he gets his comeuppance, and he gets killed, your usual default setting would be, now all the other cult members or people in hell are going to attack, our rookie cop.
Yeah.
But instead, now they treat him like he's the god, right? Because he's the one who's bested Baba, right? Yeah. And the whole thing with the key, and that he gets the key in the dream from the police
Great
boss,
Love it.
And then that he puts the key into the tattooed keyhole on Baba's forehead. Like, all of these, like, and watching it again, I was just like, once I knew kind of where the movie was going, I was like, God, there's actually, and it sounds weird to say this about a movie where a guy pulls out another guy's intestines and somebody has sex with a demon cow lady. Like, it's funny to say this, but the amount of restraint to get all the symbolism perfect for those moments.
It is funny, but you're right.
I mean, it is. It sounds insane to say that, but you're like, I've seen movies that don't have the restraint, though, right? Like movies like the Saw movies don't have the restraint. They're just like, and more heads explode, and more heads explode.
Yeah.
And here it's like I said, he's lovingly talking to the one guy who, again, in the beginning is talking about bestiality, and at the end right before he's killed, he has to have sex with a woman that's wearing a cow head. So again, this restraint, like it's all like done so metered.
Yeah.
It's like
It's quite an accomplishment. No,
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot going on here. And again, another rewatch, I would be able to do this, be able to pick up all of the little things that you're talking about that I wasn't looking for the first time because I didn't know.
because it's just washing over you, and you're like, I don't know what the fuck is happening.
You're correct. That is a tough balance, even in a movie like this, to still create something effective, and have that. You know, they set up the rules of this world, and once you can do that in some movies, it kind of writes itself to some degree.
Yeah, all the pieces start to click into place. Where again, like, you know, and I think the first time I watched it, this whole idea of there being almost like a 7 deadly sins in each, or in this case 5, and each character kind of locking into the whole of that as part of their punishment or what happens to them, wasn't something that I even noticed the first time around. But this time, that whole opening monologue talking about sex and talking about, and the Goodfellas style scene and all these things, watching it again this time and remembering the fate that befalls all 5 of the guys, I was like, oh, that's really clever in a way that you don't notice, because the first time around it's a wild ass circus ride and you're just kind of along with it.
It's kind of got like a Mad Max Fury Road feel to it, like just because you're just you don't have time to get character development because they're just going.
Yeah, we don't even know who these guys are until the minute that the movie opens and they start talking, and we have to find out along the way. And some of the people are kind of unreliable because they're not acting the way that they should, and that's because potentially they're in hell the whole time, right?
Yes.
And so it is like, yeah, it's pretty interesting the way that those elements work, and I wonder where the director got that idea, because that's very different than most horror movies. And to your point, it is more like a gangster flick in that way. It almost has this like Guy Ritchie pedaled all the way down, go vibe to it, which you usually don't do in horror movies because you try to do this slow burn thing. And this still has a slow burn to a degree because of that dreamlike quality. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we're quoting a lot of pretty excellent movies when we're talking about this movie. The same thing happened with Under the Shadow, actually.
That's very true.
Where we, you know, like you said, there's influences, our influences, so we can capture the things that they're talking about here. And at the very least, it's at least people that understand what works for a movie, right? If you're able to put all of that into one bowl and make it your own, like that's awesome.
That's a spicy pho.
Yeah, that's inspirational. And then
and we're not even talking. We haven't even mentioned any of the Italian giallo stuff. That obviously, I mean, there's so much Lucio Fulci in here. There's so much like Suspiria vibe and like, you know what I mean, like that with the gels of like, here's your pink light and here's your blue light, but then you're also in shadow. Like, there's tons of influence of that too.
Last like 10-15 minutes, there's like no dialogue.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're just living in this world with them, which is not fun.
I will mention, I love his stool. the big henchman keeps pushing, so because he's a little guy, he can get up on, and that's literally what the rookie uses to beat him to death with, is that stool. I was like, that's fucking great.
Good irony there. And then, you know, he escapes.
Yeah.
And what a fucking twist at the end. Oh my God, I wasn't even expecting this. Like I said, they did it again, coming back to him as a boy at the beginning and to him as a cop. And then
he leaves
finding out
through
that
his childhood bedroom hallway again as an adult. I was like, that's some Being John Malkovich or something, where you're like, oh, that's so great. And then, he's laughing again, Texas Chainsaw, totally triumphant. And he gets hit by his own cop van, hits him, which starts the whole thing over again.
It's a big circle. Circle of hell.
Yep. You know, for a movie that has so many really vivid images in it, the one I keep coming back to that was weirdly beautiful is, you know, in one of the dream sequences where he's back talking to the boss in the diner, and his chair falls back and he goes underwater, which is again very Nightmare on Elm Street-esque of him going under the water. The two giant hands coming into the water to scoop him up.
Oh man, what an
That
awesome
was
shot!
Wild.
Yeah, I actually wrote that down. That was impressive shot. It had so like the devil and Prince of Darkness.
Ooh, yeah.
The where its hand kind of comes out of the mirror at the end,
But
and
then the
it
mirror's
feels
water.
yeah, but it feels giant. It feels like a massive thing is inside of there, and that had the same feeling. What a great shot!
Yeah, and again, funny enough, the giant hands of the smallest character in the movie that needs a stool to stand on, showing that size has nothing to do with your intimidation factor.
yeah, absolutely. Really fun movie.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you liked it.
You are right. The intestine part got a little like I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
Oh, what? Oh, I got a text.
Oh,
Look at
that.
No.
Yeah, that's
Again, not
one of
for
the make or
everyone.
break moments. That and then the Deliverance style scene where he has sex with the cow woman.
Yep.
Those are make or break moments. If you can make it through those, because again, I think that to use Deliverance as another version of this, like there's something about that when you sexualize the violence that makes
Lot
it
of
so
sex in
much more taboo, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what makes it, and the fact that earlier that character is really swinging his dick around metaphorically about what a badass he is, that being used against him is that much more personal and creepy. I just love this movie. I don't think enough
We've been
people...
talking about it for a long time, and I'm
Yeah.
glad we finally got to talk about it. So
Totally. I'm really happy that you liked it.
awesome. All right. Well, that's the International Horror Festival. Next week, we are going to do that one scene from Eastern Promises.
Ooh, you know the one.
If you know the one, you should hit subscribe, hit the like button, all that stuff. We'd love to have you along for the ride. But yeah, until next week.
Bye, you guys.
See you.